Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Our phone lines are open. Give me a call, 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez. And, of course, plenty going on. Night number 5 of the L.A. riots, the new L.A. riots, not to be confused with the L.A. riots of years past. And there's been plenty. It's a long tradition in L.A. to have riots. But a federal judge today saying that President Trump can send the National Guard and that Governor Newsom has lost his lawsuit against President Trump, getting him to stop the use of National Guard. I'll give you a little bit of this from Breitbart News. Judge Charles Breyer, who was appointed by former President Bill Clinton, denied Governor Newsom's emergency request for temporary restraining order regarding the president deploying 4,000 National Guardsmen to Los Angeles. Breyer also granted Trump the administration's request for additional time to file a response brief. So that will be filed by the White House by tomorrow. And a quote from the order right here. Plaintiffs Gavin Newsom and the state of California filed an ex parte motion for a temporary restraining order at 11 a.m. on June 10th, 2025. Breyer said in his filing, defendants Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and the Department of Defense requested 24 hours from the time that plaintiff filed their motion for temporary restraining order and to file a brief. Breyer added that plaintiffs may file a response by that opposition time, which is Thursday morning. The court will hold a hearing on plaintiff's motion at 1:30 on Thursday. So right now, the National Guard continues. And it likely, I'm going to guess, will continue because this is a right the president's always had. But you never know what a judge might do. You know, you never know when a judge might say, well, since I'm a judge and you're the president of the United States, I guess I can overrule you, because that's why people become judges nowadays, right? At least the ones on the left. Crazy times that we're living in. And if the president has any power at all, they say he's an authoritarian dictator. Yep. Anyway, that's the scoop on that. Yet another courtroom win for El Trompito, at least as of today. And we also have just a reminder that this is not a protest. This is a bunch of organized professional insurrectionists that are engaging in my opinion, primitive warfare with the police, with federal buildings, with, we the people in many ways. And this is done to embolden more derelicts to go and break the ICE detainees out of the detention center in L.A. I think this is their ultimate end goal, because that's where they keep trying to go, and this is what the National Guard is protecting, right? Federal buildings. And these federal buildings are housing people that have been detained and are scheduled for deportation. And it really begs the question, why? Why on earth would this be happening? Well, I mean, we can talk about it, every which way from now to kingdom come, and everybody will have a different opinion. I stick with some stuff that I read years ago. Years ago, not that many years ago, I'm not that old, I'm 47, but about 6 or 7 years ago, I'd read a small book, a booklet, and I had some excerpts of it that were on YouTube that I played on my radio show in New York City. And I wish I could remember the title, but I really can't at the moment. But it was about how communists do what they do. And it was about the use of smoke. The thick billows of black smoke is what it talked about, and how that caused a sense of fear in the general public's eyes. And they recommended setting garbage cans or cars, anything you could set on fire, and keep doing it, because the fires made it look like you were getting something done. And it was a whole thing on this. And it was remarkable. It really, really was remarkable to me. And if I'm not mistaken, it was written by a black guy that was a communist. And then he left the Communist Party and wrote this book. It was kind of a turncoat, right? And became a normal person. But it was really eye-opening. And this is what they do. They always want to divide and conquer. They always have to figure out a way to say that you're the oppressed and you're the oppressor. If there's no oppressed and oppressor, they can't survive, right? They also can't survive if God is in the picture. Communists will never talk about God. But ultimately, now the leftists are changing their mind. Why? Because some left-wing activists are now saying that they have to fly inverted American flags instead of Mexican flags in the LA riots, because it's actually not helping their cause. It's helping Trump's cause, right? Because Trump comes out here and says, they're rapists, they're murderers, they're criminals, right? And then they go out there and they break Los Angeles and they're trying to kill the cops. So it doesn't help their cause much. And the folks that run the Women's March, remember the ladies with the pink vagina hats? Well, they are now saying you got to fly a U.S. flag upside down in response to Trump sending the National Guard to L.A. Yeah, listen, I don't make this stuff up. I just share it with you. and this is what they're talking about right now. Listen to this. We're watching a dictator take over in real time. The upside down flag is the warning sign that to the world that American democracy is in distress. It's not unpatriotic to resist. It is unpatriotic to stay silent. That is a quote from the Women's March founder and the president, Emiliana Guerresa. Guerresa or Guerreca. I don't know if it's a hard C or a soft C. You never know. Anyway, she said that in a press release earlier today. And the group's press release was branded as an SOS and referred to these flying flags upside down as a historic signal of distress and a visible act of resistance to the escalating authoritarian threat. This reminds me again of the rhetoric that was used by the rapper Doechii at the BET Awards. And again, I listened to some of her stuff, like I said, on that short car ride to Philly not too long ago. And it was a little provocative, but it wasn't horrible. I enjoyed listening to it. I'm a fan of hip-hop, a little risque at times, but I'm a big boy. And all I could say is so many people, I think, are being misled. It's so important for us to be, like Ronald Reagan said, informed patriots. Just because someone tells you that Trump is taking your democracy or, we're deporting these poor people. I mean, they put themselves in this situation, right? And I'm not trying to blame them. I'm really not. I'm trying to say that they came to this country either through the border, knowingly, that, through the back door, unless they came in the last, recent round of open border days where Biden was inviting everybody. And his borders are Kamala Harris was saying, don't come, but would literally open the door for them. So I'm not saying those people are exempt, but I'm saying if they came on a plane, they had to fill out a visa form. They fill out a visa form. They get to the United States. It tells them you're good for 6 months or 90 days or whatever it is. And yet they overstay the visa. And then we're surprised when Trump, who runs for president, and tens of millions of Americans vote for him to do exactly this, do it. I mean, this stuff defies logic. So we're going to continue our conversation on that stuff. I also want to get into a couple of other topics because a lot of things on the table tonight. What's the latest with the autopen, right? The Biden autopen fiasco. I know yesterday President Trump was answering some questions, but he always goes back and tags it back, the Biden autopen or whoever was using this autopen. And like I said, I don't know that much can come about this, but I'm open to someone changing my mind. So we're going to learn a little bit more about what's going on there, as well as talk about some of the headlines of the day. And I'm looking forward to doing that with Congressman Jimmy Patronis from Florida's 1st District. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
For joining us. I want to start tonight by asking you a little bit about Joe Biden. Everyone is talking now that there are books out talking about the cognitive decline. It's very apparent, I think, to a lot of people. Well, Speaker Newt Gingrich, we're so happy to have you here on My View. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start tonight by asking you a little bit about Joe Biden. Everyone is talking now that there are books out talking about the cognitive decline. It's very apparent, I think, to a lot of people what has transpired over the past 4 years. Where does this rank in terms of political scandals, and how is this going to impact things going forward?
Well, I think by the time we learn all of it, it'll be the biggest scandal in American history.
The biggest scandal in American history, and that's coming from former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Of course, President Trump echoing the same. And I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to do it with a member of the House of Representatives representing the 1st District in Florida, Congressman Jimmy Patronis. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Now, Congressman, what's your thought on Speaker Gingrich's assessment that this is the biggest scandal in history once all is said and done?
I tell you, I'm afraid it could be. I mean, you can go back to other administrations that aren't as well documented. I'm talking, whether it be Woodrow Wilson or what have you, where, there was maybe an illness or something where his wife was running the shop. But, we're talking about the most documented presidency probably in the history of America, between social media, cameras, access to just reporters, and you name it, just the type of society that we're in. I think it's interesting that, now it starts to come forward and we study, the signatures or maybe irregularities in the signatures. We study the actions of President Biden while he was in office. And then, you question the cover-ups, or you question his cognitive ability, and now you have, all of the rats scurrying off the ship before it goes down, trying to make as quick of a buck as they can, writing their own books, and or trying to change party affiliations just so they can land a job in some type of a network that maybe doesn't want to hear a particular political point of view anymore. So I think what is yet to come is really going to probably be pretty extraordinary, and unfortunately, it will probably be pretty disturbing.
Yeah, Congressman, I think you have a solid point there. And my hope is that something can actually be done. I feel like I'm a little bit skeptical about whether we will be able to or won't be able to actually get to the bottom of anything, or at least anything actionable in so much as, how do we find out? What will we find out? My hope is that, you guys in Congress can exercise your oversight authority to get to some of that. But it begs the question, why didn't anybody who's constitutionally sworn to uphold their oath if they think the president is incapacitated to use the 26th Amendment? I never heard any talk about that, Congressman.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm getting at. So you had a number of individuals that were working in a self-preservation mode, as they had the influence of the Oval Office at their discretion. And so it's really disturbing to me that, you've had this ongoing, cover-up that was taking place. And I hate to be a conspiracy theorist. I truly do. But this is why I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in transparency. Transparency is the best disinfectant. So if we do an investigation and we treat it just like, the same type of architecture as J6, Democrats and Republicans sit down together. You may have pushback from Democrats who want to participate, but at the same time, these Democrats are going to have to defend this unbelievable cover-up that potentially took place at the White House. So let's get everything out. Let's flush it all out. Hopefully nothing happened. Hopefully it's totally, innocent and there was nothing wrong. We just had a president who just happened to be, just in his later years, just not as effective in communicating as he was in his early years. But you know what? Let's just get those answers out. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Folks, we're on with Congressman Jimmy Patronis. And as far as you know, based on your work in the House, is there any other legislative action that you all are thinking of taking with respect to this situation?
Well, I mean, you've got what actions are being taken place by the Department of Justice. You've got, what actions have been talked about. I've filed a bill. You've got other members of Congress. And look, there is a lane to play in of where this, has a place. It deserves some bandwidth. At the same time, we have got to also focus on getting the big, beautiful bill across the finish line. We've got to focus on passing what will be the largest spending cut in ever the House of Representatives and Congress's history in one piece of legislation. So there's a certain amount of bandwidth, and as we will continue to push forward legislation, we all have a right to want to get to the bottom of these answers. So we'll continue to advocate for it. And look, some people say, well, it's just convenient how his doctor doesn't know about his PSA levels, that he's got, a stage 3 or stage 4 level of prostate cancer. And it's convenient they brought it out now. Maybe not. Look, that's the privacy somebody has when they're dealing with cancer. My wife's a cancer survivor, but it definitely stirs the pot of controversy.
Yeah, it surely does. Now, with about a minute and a half before we pause for our break and have you back, I want to get your take on the big, beautiful bill. There's been some criticism of it, saying it's going to add to the deficit. Of course, it includes the Trump tax cuts, which in effect would make sure that we have the biggest tax cuts ever, as opposed to the biggest tax increase ever. What's the temperature like from your assessment, coming from your colleagues in the Senate?
So I think if the Senate would be willing to cut more, I think the House would gladly accept it. I'm not sure at what level of appetite the Senate can get to, but I know this, increasing the debt ceiling is something that I think every member of Congress, at least on the Republican side, has, some anxiety with. But when you look at what we're, attempting to accomplish, what President Trump got elected on, these are the issues that the voters wanted. They don't want any tax on overtime. They don't want any tax on tips. They want to create an enthusiasm for buying American-made products. So some of these things are going to need some bandwidth of cash that can be leveraged in order to bring these things to life, in order to get that cash flowing. And I'm a big believer. The people of District 1, or in this case, the people of the United States, spend their money better than Washington, D.C. does.
Amen to that, Congressman. You and me both. Folks, we're coming right back with Congressman Jimmy Patronis, representing we the people in Florida's 1st District. Congressman, stick with us. We're coming right back. We're going to continue our conversation on the LA riots and some other topics. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Deal with the situation in California?
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see, but I can tell you last night was terrible. The night before that was terrible. We have, as you've seen, it was on most of your networks, people with big, heavy hammers pounding the concrete and pounding curbs, pounding it, breaking up all, and handing these big chunks of concrete to people. And they were taking that concrete, going up on bridges and dropping it into the roof of a car. They were throwing it at our police. They were throwing it at our soldiers that are there. And we got it stopped, and we have them in custody right now. Look, if we didn't get involved, right now, Los Angeles would be burning, just like it was burning a number of months ago with all the houses that were lost. Los Angeles right now would be on fire, and we have it in great shape. I'm not playing around.
That's President Trump today in the White House saying he's not playing around. And I think you can't play around, right? You're talking about people's lives, in particular the lives of law enforcement officers who are getting chunks of sidewalk thrown at them, cinder blocks, all sorts of projectiles. I mean, just insanity what's going on. So let's get some reaction to all of this stuff that's going on from our guest. I want to bring back in Congressman Jimmy Patronis from Florida's 1st District. Congressman, when you hear the president say he's not playing around and, you know, the talk of the use of the Insurrection Act, what's your initial thought on that?
So I think the one thing that people are forgetting is how much Donald Trump loves this country. And whether you're a blue state, red state, it doesn't matter. He is going to make sure that our citizens are protected, that we're a nation of laws, that the laws are respected. And if a governor does not want to take the federal laws and enforce them, then the president will come in and do exactly that. The citizens of Los Angeles don't deserve what's taking place there. If the governor won't act, then this president will. And I truly believe he does this because he wants to protect his people. He wants to protect his communities. He wants to protect our nation. And so, I think sometimes his show of force is just because he's trying to save our country.
No question. And, you know, Congressman, there's a lot of talk about where is all of this money coming from? Yesterday, there was a clip of a local news affiliate doing local coverage of the LA riot action, insurrection, however we're going to label it. And a pickup truck pulled up, and they just started unloading boxes and smaller boxes coming out of the other box. And these were bionic gas masks. They didn't look cheap, and they had, I don't know, at least 50 of them. And they were giving them to all of the people there as if, you know, the next step is going to be tear gas. So here, get ready for this. And I have to ask myself, how does this happen? Where does this come from? I'm looking at an article in justthenews.com. It says that there is, coming from the FBI, from Director Patel, that there may be monetary connections responsible for these riots, and some of them may be foreign. What are your thoughts, and what do you know?
Well, if you look at what these cartels have invested, look, I've been to the border. It's all about drugs. It's all about human trafficking. It's about money. It's about guns. So you've got these very sophisticated, well-to-do businesses that have made a fortune during the Biden administration. So, look, they have got resources. They're fighting for their illegal businesses to still survive. So, yeah, they've got resources. Yeah, they've got the ability to buy things and provide them to their resistance fighters in order to either try to fight a war they're not going to win, but they're going to continue to do it considering what's at stake. I mean, in one instance that I was at the Texas border, I was shared with Texas Border Patrol how they monitored a pickup truck at a super Walmart in McAllen, Texas. It had a radio signal emitted to it, so they figured, all right, there's a cell phone. They tracked the fella, got in the pickup truck. The guy in the pickup truck drove to Houston, turned around, drove right back. They stopped back at the Texas border. There was $12 million in cash in the car. And what had happened, there was a sophisticated drug operation in Houston, Texas, and this guy was a mule to take that cash back across the border. So, I mean, when you consider those type of transactions are getting interrupted, delayed, or even stopped because of President Trump enforcing the law, these are what these individuals are willing to fight to try to protect that type of cash flow.
You know, Congressman Jimmy Patronis, yesterday I had a conversation with a former LA gang member who was explaining to me that many of these people that are doing the burning and these guys you see on motorcycles are gang members. And he gave me the names of a couple of these groups. And
sure.
It's public knowledge that this is going on, and it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that there may be a cartel influence here because a lot of times they use local gangs as their henchmen. What do you think is the plan of attack here, if you have any inside track on that? Because I feel like it almost seems like the federal government might be stretched thin because there's so much going on.
Well, consider so a buddy of mine worked under the Obama administration as a Border Patrol agent. and he was talking about how Obama decimated the morale of Border Patrol. No hiring, hands off, no touching. So here you got an administration that basically, almost really dismantled a Border Patrol agency. And then you have Trump that comes in who campaigns on exactly that, building the wall. But, I got to give it, President Trump, his first time as administration, he had so many things to try to fix at one time, and everybody in the whole entire establishment in Washington, D.C. was working against him. So now then you have the Biden administration, the Autopen administration, that, again, did everything they could to dismantle the operations just like Obama did. And now President Trump is trying to rebuild it. Well, now, you know what you're catching hell with? You're catching hell recruiting people to get back as an ICE agent, to rebuild that law enforcement base, the training, the expertise, the resources, the dollars. I mean, so you have former ICE agents that are basically being pled to come back to work because they're at the need. So this is why we've done the 257 or 275 program, where there's training of local law enforcement that want to participate in order to understand the type of procedures that an ICE agent needs to know in order to enforce that special book of laws.
Congressman, on a separate issue, and it's a really good point that you make, I wanted to just get your take on the political landscape of things. This evening, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is giving a speech. They lost the feed. The screen went blank. It looks like they're having trouble, getting his message out to the masses. And this is the guy who many in the left are holding up as their hope to be the Democrat nominee. Others are saying it's going to be your colleague AOC, all out crazy. What do you think is the current scene? Who do you think gets it?
I think Gavin Newsom, incredible hair, and he is charismatic, and as we've seen, firsthand on TV, where he has the ability to lie through his teeth and really make you feel okay about it. So I mean, he is really, I think, a incredible threat, simply because he comes from a big state. He's got the charisma. He's got the talking points. And even there, after Trump got elected, he started pivoting and attacking to the right on, men's and women's sports and these issues. But then he's starting to realize if he attacks too far to the right, then his base starts to abandon him. So he's got to figure out who he's going to be when that day comes. But I'm just glad that the Democrats are eating their young. The message was resounding this past November with President Trump's election, with the popular vote in the Electoral College. People are tired of the chaos and the lack of respect that the American public has gotten over the last 4 years. And I do not see them having an appetite for another Democrat in the White House. But you know what? It's ours to lose. We can't screw up. We've got to deliver for the American public.
Outstanding. Congressman Jimmy Patronis, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Hope to have you back soon. Let everybody know how they could follow you and keep up to speed on the great work you're doing in Congress.
Yeah, it's at Jimmy Patronis. My DMs are open. I hope you'll reach out to me. The last thing I'll leave with you, if you don't hold your electeds accountable, you get the government you deserve. God bless.
Amen to that, brother. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we come back. Yes, sir. Thank you. Your thoughts, your calls, reactions to our conversation with Congressman Patronis. Gavin Newsom losing his feed tonight on his audio and his video, apparently, as well as everything that's going on in L.A. and elsewhere in the world. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
And we thank you so much for that. You make things seem brighter.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company all evening long. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 8334 Valdez. We're live and national, so if you're hearing me, you can call the studio right now, and I'd love to talk to you. But first, I want to bring something up to speed in my neck of the woods. You guys know I was born in Brooklyn, New York. However, I moved across the Hudson River to the 6th borough known as North Jersey. And in New Jersey today, just like Virginia, we are the off-year states. And there was a primary today, Republican primary for governor. And guess who won the Republican primary for governor? That's right, the candidate that President Trump backed, a guy named Jack Ciattarelli, who has secured the GOP nomination to be New Jersey governor. This is he's going to be his third run for governor, as I understand it. He had a pretty decisive victory, at least according to Fox News. Let's take a look at what they've got to say here, what the numbers look like. AP and CNN made their projections less than 20 minutes after the polls closed at 8 o'clock in New Jersey. And all I could say is that's not always the case, right? I've lived in Jersey for a little bit now, and I can tell you that sometimes it takes a while to count these things. The fact that Jack Ciattarelli won so quickly, and there was a lot of good candidates, good conservative radio host Bill Spadia, as well as others that were involved in the primary. John Bramnick, a state senator. The fact that he won as quickly as he did means there was a significant amount of numbers there. And that tells me President Trump still has a lot of sway in New Jersey. Now, you got to remember, New Jersey is a big blue state and half of it, or at least the bottom half of it, where there's less people, is bright red. and I think there's a lot of movement there. So we will see how this continues. But good news for President Trump, good news for Jack Ciattarelli in Jersey. Now, I wanted to play an audio clip for you, and maybe I'll do that when we come back from the next break. But maybe I think I have time to do it here. It's not that long. This is Representative Maxine Waters. She's at a press conference today, and she says there was no violence in L.A. because, well, nobody was shot and nobody was killed. Check this out.
And even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence. Nobody was shot. Nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw.
Do you remember when they said, don't believe your lying eyes? Well, that's what she's saying, right? Don't rely on what you've been told or the few incidents you saw. So when you have the police in full riot gear with 5, 6 police cars getting attacked by way more people than they were, with cinder blocks and chunks of sidewalk and curb, right? They were breaking the curb like a chain gang. I mean, it was amazing what I saw. Them cracking open the curb, taking those chunks of concrete and tossing them over the side of the overpass onto the highway below where the cops were. I saw not multiple videos of the same incident. I saw multiple videos of multiple incidents. When the cops need help, who do they call? They call the state police. Well, what happens when it's the California Highway Patrol, the state police? When they need help, who do they call? The National Guard. And guess who didn't help them? Their governor, Gavin Newsom. Clear to me, these guys are all messed up. Anyway, I want to go to the phones. Let's get your thoughts, calls, and reactions on this stuff. Let's go to Eduardo calling us from Tampa, Florida, streaming the program on richvaldez.com. Eduardo, go right ahead. Your thoughts.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. Well, a few things here. You know, this lady I was doing some research, only has 22 permits on the post-LA fires for the rebuilding.
Who's that, Karen Bass?
This city's right. 22 permits so far.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
That is.
Yeah, and then
sad.
This city's going to host the World Cup, and next year, and then in 2 years, the Olympics. So, yeah, Mayor Bass, we are testing you because it looks like you're incompetent because this curfew that should have been imposed there a few days ago, she's just coming to that tonight. So she's late to the ballgame. It's pretty ridiculous. 450 gangs in L.A., Rich. I mean, what is Maxine Waters talking about? With all those gangs, really?
Yeah, you know, Eduardo, it's one thing to turn a blind eye to things, right? To do nothing. And it's another thing to actively embrace and be enamored with terrorist criminals, gangs, foreign terrorist organizations, and the like. And it seems to me that that's exactly what the Democrats do time and again. They fall in love with the bad guys. I don't understand why or how. I'm little by little wrapping my head around this. And as I know more, you guys will know more. Eduardo, thanks for the call, brother. And very good point. They need to step up how they're fixing these houses from those fires, those wildfires, as well as, you know, getting it in gear. We shouldn't have the looting. We shouldn't have any of this stuff. And the point that you made about they should have curfews, I agree with that 100%. Why are people allowed to be outside? Enforce the curfew, get them to go home. The problem is they're outnumbered. That's why President Trump needed to send the National Guard. And I think he sent the Marines just as a cherry on top. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, to the phones we go. I want to go to one of our regulars in Boise, Idaho, streaming the show tonight. Let's go to Paul. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Rich. I wanted to mention that Alcoholics Anonymous is celebrating their 90th birthday of the meeting between the two men that started it. And, you know, without that program, I don't think I'd be around here to be able to be on your show.
That's great.
It really has saved my life. I praise God for that program every day.
Amen to that, brother. I'm happy to hear that. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to mention that the riots, it involves a lot of communists. Karen Bass has made 6 trips, 4 of them to Cuba and 2 to the Congo, I believe it was, when the fire started in L.A. and she couldn't be there to give any instructions.
Yeah. And, how convenient, right? Paul, thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
Music means I got to go. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to Alcoholics Anonymous and everybody out there that's participating in that 90th anniversary. And amigos, of course, there's more to come straight ahead with me. But if this is the end of the road for you, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. We're live, we're national, And, of course, the phone lines are open. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And there is a bunch of stuff going on in the news. The majority of what I see out there is related to these riots in Los Angeles. But there's plenty. There's plenty to discuss. I saw this story that I thought was interesting. And, again, it's not breaking news, but it's, I'm going to call it breaking news adjacent, right? And the reason I say that is because we've known for a while that people just aren't having as many kids as they used to have. And that's a given. And that the birth rate is down. That's also a given. But at the United Nations, they're now warning that there's a global fertility crisis. And that's different. That's different than not having kids. It's saying you can't have kids. And we talk about not having kids pretty regularly on this program. But you have to have kids, and I would say now more than ever, you got to have a lot of them, right? Because this world has become upside down with crazy. Now, AOC and Elizabeth Warren and the rest of the all-out crazy, all-out commie left, they would say that, I'm not having any kids because the world is going to end in 12 years because of climate change, because of yada, yada, yada. But I would say the exact opposite. I would say you're going to have a bunch of kids if you want to bring about the type of world that you want your kids to live in. You're going to have to make that world. And we see that being true all over the place, right? I see it all the time. The key to winning anything is having more people do it, whether it's people that you birth, people that you recruit, people that you convince, people that you import, right? And this is the truth in everything. With elections, they're trying to import more people to have more power, to have more apportionment in their congressional districts to get more money. With religion, many of them are having more children. With politics, they recruit people, right? Or with their political positions. So it's always about people. And when you hear these stories, or at least when I look at a story like this and I say, man, we have a global fertility crisis. This is very different than I don't want to have kids because of climate change. This is, I can't have kids likely because of all the garbage that we eat. So the United Nations Population Fund, there's so many parts of this monstrous organization, which I hope one day doesn't exist, released their State of the World Population Report. According to the report, the world is experiencing a fertility crisis, and most of the policies implemented to fight this problem have been ineffective. And here's the quote. As policymakers and pundits raise the alarm about fertility rates, they're often assuming that people are having children. And it's because they can and they want to. And if they're not having them, it's because they can't or don't want to. But that's not the case. The report made the contrary argument that based on a survey of 14,000 people in 14 different countries, that most people want to have children, but many of them feel shut out of parenthood. Over half of them cited financial worries, including housing costs, child care, and job insecurity, as the reasons they were reluctant to have more children. But that has nothing to do with fertility. The report went on to lament that policies to combat this very problem, including lump sum payments when a baby is born, and short-term efforts to lower child care and housing costs, have been ineffective and offer scant support. And it goes on. I'm trying to get to the fertility part, but it's not bringing it up here. But the bigger issue I want to get to here, before I run out of time, is if you are a ideological movement, right? And I'm going to say that I think the Marxists that make up the majority of the extreme left, the point there for them is it's an ideological one, right? This is clearly what they do. I think for many of us, the reason that we are culture warriors is because it's a different type of thing. We're not advocating for something in particular. We're just advocating that you don't get in the way of what we believe. And by that, we're constantly saying things like, look, do whatever you want. Just, let me mind my business. You mind your business. That doesn't work when somebody's actively trying to change your mind. And if they don't think they could change your mind, then they're going to try and aim a little lower to change your kid's mind. And this is clearly problematic, but it's a problem that persists. So I think to myself, what would stop a lot of people from having a kid today? And they cited a few reasons there, and I get that. But I think the bigger issue is, how do you do it like you used to do it, right? And I don't mean how, like how to make a baby. I mean, I was at lunch today with a friend of mine's dad, and he was telling me about how he knew somebody that had 34 children with, I don't know, several different women throughout his life. A lot of kids. And I thought to myself, how do you even have 34 children? What kind of job do you need? And he told me he was a mechanic, an auto mechanic. And I said, wow, they must make great money. And he went on to say, well, back then you could have a lot of kids and, you didn't need the kind of money you need today. We didn't have the same type of consumerism that we have today. People were a lot more frugal and et cetera, et cetera. But it made me think, even if I wanted to have more children, and I have two kids, one 19, one 23, how would I do it? If you are going to take care of your kids, you've got to be able to be there to help them with an education if they need help in that arena, if that's what they're pursuing. You've got to be able to help them to eat and, sports, activities, dance, cheerleading, whatever it is they decide to do. All of these things cost money. Vacations, housing, auto insurance. Man, auto insurance. So I say all of that to say, it's, of course, people are opting to have smaller families. But the fact that people are infertile, the fact that abortion is given out, right? It's almost on demand in so many places. All of these things affect fertility rates and birth rates, I should say. So it's clear to me that we have a problem. The question is, how do you fix it? And I think the way you fix it is by encouraging people to have kids. And guess who was doing that? That's right, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. He's now promoting a savings plan for newborns. Very, very interesting plan here. You put in $1,000 now. I think you can get something like $50,000 when they turn 18 or 21 or something like that. And I thought it was a very good idea. It's the equivalent of a savings bond, these new Trump baby accounts, but with a different type of twist, $1,000 per baby Trump account. And I think this is it's a good idea, right? You want to encourage people to have children. Even, like me, I think there's people in their 40s that have kids. I wasn't planning on having kids at this age, but only because I like to go places and I like the mobility that comes with not having a small child. And I already did that whole small child thing. But I think I'm young enough, right? One of my brothers had twins at 54. And he's on top of his game. He's loving it. So Trump has introduced Trump accounts. And they provide parents of newborns with $1,000 to invest on behalf of their child's future. And it's a pro-family initiative that will help many Americans harness the strength of the American economy. This is a quote. Excuse me. And I think it's a good idea. And it's a pilot program, but it is included in the one big, beautiful bill. So as we go through the evening, I want to get your take on those of you who are familiar with this program, and what your thoughts are on this this plan to give people $1,000 to invest in their kids. I think it's actually not a bad idea, only because it takes the onus away from Social Security and these other types of more socialist programs and puts it in, kind of balls in your court. Here's $1,000. Invest as you see fit, which I think is a very, very good idea. So anyway, I want to get your thoughts on that. I want to continue our conversation about California as well and everything else we're talking about. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Listen, I like your show. It's the best night show there is. I think you got the best spirit, the best emotions. You're real. You're really a good guy.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And before going further, I want to say a few words about the situation in Los Angeles, California. Have you heard of the place? Where I've deployed thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of Marines to protect federal law enforcement from the attacks of a vicious and violent mob. Generations of Army heroes did not shed their blood on distant shores only to watch our country be destroyed by invasion and third world lawlessness here at home, like is happening in California. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not let that happen. It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. President Trump vowing to liberate Los Angeles from the hands of the insurrectionists and taking heat over using words like that. He takes heat over anything, right? The guy breathes, he's taking heat. But welcome back, America. It's Rich Valdez, and I want to have a conversation about this stuff with somebody who understands this stuff quite intimately, I would say. He's a former state assemblyman in the state of California. He served in the California Army National Guard, which is in service right now during the LA riots. And he's the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Former Assemblyman Chuck DeVore. Welcome, sir.
Hey, great to be on your show, Rich.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. And, you know, you were in service as a legislator, as a guardsman, and you know, looking at what's going on in Los Angeles now versus what you've experienced throughout your career, what's your initial take on that?
Well, there's some things that are the same and some things that are very, very different. One of the things that are the same is that Los Angeles, like much of the West Coast, or basically the west of the Rockies, is very under-policed compared to the rest of the country. It's kind of that libertarian-ish vibe, you know, leave me alone sort of thing. And so police have never been particularly well-funded in the West. And that allows for things to get out of hand very quickly. And we saw that in 1992 when the LAPD was something like 30 or 40% understaffed from what it should have been. And, of course, we saw Mayor Bradley and others stand down. In other words, when the violence started with the verdict that came out from the Rodney King trial, and the verdict came out letting the police off, exonerating them, there was this intersection where things started to get out of control, and then the LAPD were told to pull back. And very quickly, that intersection turned into a death trap, almost killed a truck driver named Reginald Denny, and after that, it was off to the races. But what the main focus of the 92 riot was looting for material gain. And so when we showed up in force, there were 10,000 Army National Guard activated and sent in. Eventually, we were federalized by President George H.W. Bush under the Insurrection Act. But
you mean this isn't the first time that's happened?
Oh,
as the media is claiming?
The Insurrection Act has been it's been invoked 31 times. It hasn't been invoked yet, though. That's interesting. We're kind of in this gray area. So people ran from us, though. They wanted nothing to do with law enforcement. They wanted nothing to do with all the different police agencies that came in with mutual aid because their object was to steal a television and try to get away with it. That's not the case now. What you're seeing now that's completely different and very disturbing to me. I call it a combination between an extortion racket and psychological warfare. And it's where the funders of the organized violence, right? You have the well-meaning, useful idiots in some cases. Some people are genuine in their desire to have illegal immigrants continue to live in America. But there are funders of this who are saying, it's as if they're saying, you know, that's a nice city you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it due to your enforcement of federal law. It'd be a shame if your enforcement of federal law caused your popularity to drop and your party to suffer losses. That's the game they're playing. They played it in 2020, and Trump didn't engage. You know, he was advised not to call up the National Guard in these blue states where they didn't want the Guard to help out the police that they had defunded under defund the police. And so he let some of these cities burn a little bit. It's different. It's different this time around. I think the president's learned a lot of lessons, and I think that his near-death experience has caused him to be considerably more, how shall we say, stiff in his spine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think President Trump's definitely, he's not new to the presidency anymore. He knows a lot about what's going on in Washington. And unlike very few other presidents, save maybe one, he's had the benefit of being president for 4 years, taking a 4-year break for reflection, and then coming back. And I think that is a secret weapon that they just don't understand yet.
Well, I mean, absolutely it is, and you're seeing the fruits of it with his increasing popularity on this very topic. Even before the riots in Los Angeles, he was back up above 50% among the American public when it came to how he was handling immigration and illegal immigration. So I think those polls are only going to go up. Now, there is danger. I think the left, I think the professional agitators, frankly, I think they want a martyr. I think they want somebody to get shot and to get shot very publicly and to see if they can turn around the narrative. So we'll see. Unfortunately, the violence isn't quite quelled yet. And while the city of Los Angeles did institute a curfew, I don't think they have enough people to necessarily enforce it. It's not like when we had eventually 12,000 active duty Army and National Guard and 1,500 Marines on the streets of LA enforcing a curfew, along with thousands of additional police officers that came in under mutual aid agreements.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with retired Assemblyman Chuck DeVore from the state of California. He's also Army National Guardsman who was in service during the LA riots, during the Rodney King riots. And we're going to continue to talk about his experience, his op-ed on foxnews.com, and everything else that we're talking about. And amigos, if you've missed any portion of our interview, make sure you go to the website, richvaldez.com, richvaldez.com. You can hear the interview absolutely free. You can share it with people for free. And if you wanted to sign up for the podcast, you can do that as well. And we're going to be taking your calls. Your calls and more are coming up. 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. But first, we continue our conversation with the Honorable Assemblyman Chuck DeVore from the Texas Policy Foundation. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
An update to the breaking news we told you earlier about the federal judge denying California's request for an immediate restraining order from the Trump order to have National Guardsmen go to California. That was a rejection of the immediate request for action, but that same judge did set arguments for this Thursday. So a rejection of the immediate request, but not for the request in general. This as protesters take to the streets again this evening, protesting the ongoing ICE raids coming to Los Angeles. There are ICE raids all over the country right now as President Trump tries to round up increasing numbers of undocumented immigrants. We're joined by Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez, the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Conference. That's a group of Hispanic Republican members of Congress. Congressman, good to see you as always. So the members of your conference met today to talk about the situation in California. Can you tell us about what you discussed and whether there were any conclusions?
Yeah, thank you, Jake, for having me. It's pretty simple. We don't want to see, we don't want to see Los Angeles burn to the ground. It's a beautiful city. We also don't want to see that fire spread to other parts of the country. We don't want to see Miami burn. We don't want to see San Antonio burn, Denver, Arizona. We don't want to see that happen. And I think a big part of that is we all need to focus on convicted criminal illegal aliens. If we focus there, and we're not going after the milker of cows who's, in 103-degree weather, going after that guy, and we're going after the convicted criminal, I think we're on the right path. I think you can get a lot of consensus there. If you're going down where, you're just picking up Everyone who's here illegally, one, that takes you away from tackling the biggest problem in our country, which in my eyes is the convicted criminal that makes all of us unsafe.
That is from Jake Tapper on CNN today. And this is big news, right? President Trump winning in court. That's always interesting, right? When he wins, hopefully they don't switch up on him in a couple of days. But the president should be able to do what presidents do, whether your name is Trump or not. And I'm glad to see the court got it right today. I want to come back to our conversation with former California State Assemblyman Chuck DeVore, who's over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation now. He's a California Army National Guardsman, and he was actually in service during the LA riots back during the Rodney King verdict. Chuck DeVore, welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about President Trump rising in popularity, and I think it's wins like these that are somewhat decisive that allow him to actually do his job that help the popularity. That and the fact that people, I think, just don't want to live with something the Congressman was just pointing out, violent, criminal, illegal aliens. Your thoughts?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. And to have some of these fools in Los Angeles try to intimidate or break up this ICE operation that at least it has been said weren't even going after people who are here illegally, but were instead, at least the initial one, was going after an extensive money laundering operation that was also evading tariffs and other fees and was connected to Mexico and Colombia. And of course, that only means drug cartels. That's exactly what it means. And you end up with people activating on that and preventing ICE from enforcing federal law when it comes, in this case, to an international organized criminal conspiracy, money laundering. We can't afford in America to have these zones where laws are mostly ignored that the local officials and activists don't want to obey. That's not what we have in the United States. We have federal law, and the federal law should be evenly and judiciously applied across the country. And it will be, whether or not Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom want it to be or not.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think that this is the right thing, but it doesn't change the fact, Chuck DeVore, you got right now there's protesters in New York City at an ICE facility doing the same thing, trying to break people out and attract attention there. They had some protests in Florida. There's protests going on everywhere. And it seems like the congressman just mentioned, this fire in California is spreading. What do you think the next step is going to be?
Well, that's going to be really hard to determine, right? Because you have outside funders that have their own battle plan. The enemy gets a vote. So I think the first big test is tonight during the curfew. Is the curfew largely successful, or are there not enough police to enforce the curfew? And does the curfew essentially break down? Back in 1992, I can tell you with confidence that curfew was aggressively enforced, and the streets were basically a ghost town in Los Angeles when we had the curfew on. It made things very easy to keep control of the situation and prevent additional looting and arson at night. So I think that's the first big test. And then, of course, you mentioned New York, you mentioned other cities. I think the next test is, can we unravel the funding networks? Can we figure out where the money is coming from? Can we figure out if any of it is illegal, is being used to, in fact, foment violence? Perhaps the RICO Act might be employed. And can we dismantle these funding networks? I think that what we're likely going to uncover is that some of this money that is fomenting this trouble in America is coming from China via the Chinese Communist Party and its network here in the country. And I think you're also going to see that individual out of Singapore who's married to one of the Code Pink founders. And he is, of course, very closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. So you're also, ironically, in California, we know that some of the groups that are funding this trouble have been funded by California taxpayers. And lastly, it wouldn't shock me if some of these groups have received USAID money in the past as well.
That's no surprise to me, right? That USAID money is somehow involved, whether it's the cartels or the cartel in Washington known as the Deep State. They seem to work hand in glove, Chuck DeVore.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think that you have a lot of folks that have been in government for a while that are just pretty far to the left and are frankly untethered from the vast majority of Americans. So, this story is not even remotely finished with being written because, unfortunately, well north of 10 million illegal immigrants were allowed to come into the country by Joe Biden from his very first day in office. They came in a heck of a lot quicker than we can get them out. And so this is going to be a long-term effort by President Trump and whomever succeeds him, as long as he has the same policies.
Well, to be continued, right? Folks, we're on with former California State Assemblyman Chuck DeVore. He's Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation and a California Army National Guardsman who served during the first round of LA riots related to Rodney King and that verdict. And Chuck DeVore, I want you to let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the amazing work that you're doing and how they can follow you.
Well, great. Thanks for that. I'm pretty active on X. It's pretty simple, at Chuck DeVore. And then our foundation, we're the largest right-of-center state-based think tank in the country, a little over 110 people. A lot of our work is actually around the country, not just in Texas. And we can be found at texaspolicy.com.
Outstanding. Folks, check them out online. Give Chuck DeVore a follow. Sir, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here. Thanks for the update. I will definitely be calling on you again to get more of an update as we progress through this minutia. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. Godspeed to you. And amigos, we come back with your calls, thoughts, reactions, and an update on what's going on in New York City in the last couple of hours. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
The NY, and they say chaos could come to these streets next. As tensions boil on the streets of Los Angeles, with demonstrators squaring off with police and the National Guard activated and deployed.
No hate, no hate, no fear, no fear. Immigrants are welcome here.
Immigration advocates in New York say ICE is escalating workplace raids here too, and they are ready for a fight.
We are not afraid, and we will not be bullied, and you can't lock us all up.
We've been seeing workplace raids happen on Long Island, in the Hudson Valley, as well as in upstate New York, where in the span of 2 days, we saw over 140 dairy workers picked up by ICE and Border Patrol.
So that is a report from, I believe it's ABC New York, Sade Badernois, and the correspondent there. And there are hundreds protesting outside of ICE headquarters as of an hour ago. This is being reported by the New York Times. And the group is rallying near a building that houses an immigration court, which has become a flashpoint for the arrest of, immigrants and courthouses and whatnot. And again, hundreds of them. This started in L.A., some nearly 3,000 miles away from New York City, but here it is in New York City. It's happening. And my hope, this all started around 6 p.m. Eastern time in New York City and continues as we speak. So will this break out into another insurrection like we're seeing in California? I think the answer is probably not. Now you say, well, why not? They're just as, I'll tell you this. The mayor of Los Angeles doesn't owe Donald Trump anything. The mayor of New York City is a free man today because Donald Trump saw that he was a victim of lawfare and made sure that his Department of Justice, or I should say the United States Department of Justice under his watch, did the right thing by Eric Adams, even to my own chagrin, right? I'm no fan of Eric Adams. But President Trump is one of those guys that says fair is fair. And I think Adams will likely, being a former cop, do the right thing. Now, we could be wrong. Maybe tomorrow I will come on the radio and say, you know what? Adams is not doing the right thing. And maybe we'll call up our buddy Curtis Sliwa, the crime fighter that he is. And he's running for mayor, by the way. Just a quick aside on Curtis Sliwa's campaign. A couple of days ago, there was an article in New Yorker magazine by two left-leaning journalists. One, Brian Lehrer, who's very lefty, and the other one, Errol Lewis from New York One, political reporter. And both said that Sliwa has an incredibly solid chance of becoming mayor. That was echoed by the New York Post editorial board that said with three candidates in the race, former Governor Cuomo, current Mayor Adams, and Sliwa, that Sliwa's the one with the most momentum right now, with coming in at 30%. He's the only Republican in the race, therefore not dividing any of the support on that side. So back to the story here. I think it's an important thing to note that I believe Eric Adams will do the right thing. Now, listen, I hope he does the right thing because it's good to do what's right. If he doesn't, and he says, you know what, I'm going to stand in solidarity with my people, my sister, all-out crazy AOC, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, if he decides to stand in solidarity with her and support the protests if they get out of hand outside of the ICE facilities and whatnot, then I think that is not going to bode well for him. I think, he'll have a target on him from those that were once viewing him favorably, that are not proponents of illegal immigration. I don't think anybody in New York City is really advocating for illegal immigration, at least not voters. Maybe special interests, perhaps, but not the voters, because it turned the city into a hellhole, right? So we're going to see how that goes. But I'm really curious to know if anybody out there is in New York City tonight. Give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing, what you're hearing. I'm going to keep you posted from what I can see from the studio. But very interesting stuff going on. Plus, we're going to get to your calls. Actually, I'll get a call now, and then we'll do some more calls when we come back. Let's go to Tom, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Great show as always.
Thank you.
Rich, the Democratic Party is a mess because of incompetent people like Gavin Newsom. On his watch, California has rampant crime, homelessness, fiscal insanity, and 2 million undocumented illegal immigrants, undocumented. And what you have in California, Rich, is people demonstrating without a permit. And what Donald Trump is doing is backing the Constitution, which states unlawful assembly will not be tolerated. We had the same problem here in Pittsburgh with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter people marching down a main artery in Pittsburgh, carrying signs, disrupting traffic, and were whisked away in handcuffs, because they didn't have a permit. And it was unlawful assembly. This is what's happening in California, Rich.
Well, listen, Tom, I think that's probably the least of our problems, but definitely enough to get them off the street, likely. And I think the bigger part of it is the safety issue, the fact that cops are under attack. They got rocks thrown at them. They're having all sorts of things going on. And I'm glad that President Trump is taking the aggressive stance that he is to put down this insurrection. You have to. Whether it's a riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it, right? But don't call it a peaceful protest. When people are throwing rocks, setting things on fire. I just saw during the last commercial break, scrolling through my Instagram, I haven't seen any other reports on it, but somebody posted a video of a guy getting into a back and forth with police. He's behind a fence. And the next thing you know, he pulls out a gun and he starts shooting at the police. Now, I haven't seen that report out there yet, but maybe, it just happened. So a lot of times you'll see things on social media well before they're reported. But if that is in fact the case, man, imagine that. You show up to work today, they're like, put your riot gear on. We got a lot of people out there, some demonstrators, some of them getting out of hand. Right? That's what the media will have you believe. And then in reality, you've got people pulling out guns and shooting. And we saw that in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with the Rittenhouse case. All is not what it appears. When you hear Maxine Waters get out there and say, there is no violence, don't believe what you see, she's full of it. She's fake, she's phony, and she's fraud. Tom in Pittsburgh, thanks for your call. Shout out to KDKA. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. We continue the conversation with Ziggy. Ziggy's in Chicago, Illinois on WLS. Ziggy, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
I've been trying to call you for a long time. I listen to you every night.
Thank you.
You are, again, one of our heroes. You got nothing but pure positivity, okay? I have come up with, about 8 or 9 months ago, was a very, very simple solution. We can't shoot them. Me? You give me a 50 caliber, put me on the line there, I'd kill everybody. But then our society wouldn't like that. But here's the thought. You still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. Now, when these protesters start gathering, we don't need violence. We don't need our country.
All right. What do we need?
We take water cannons. We pump water.
I think that's a great idea. We did it back in the 60s. I don't know why we got away from that. I've seen them do it in other countries. Very modern machines they have. They look like street sweepers. They shoot water all over the place. They clear people out. Some of them use dye. That this way they know who the protesters were. They can go catch them later. Solid idea, Ziggy. You got my vote on that one. No shooting people with 50 calibers unless it's those rubber bullets, right? The bean bags. But thank you, Ziggy, for the call. I appreciate it. Shout out to WLS. I see we got calls from Vermont and other places. Hang on. We're coming right back. There's more to come straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be with you. We're live and national this Tuesday evening. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I want to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to do some international affairs tonight. Talk about what's going on around the world with all the different conflicts there that are occurring. Of course, we're going to talk about some of this California stuff because this stuff continues. But while this stuff is happening here in the United States, there's also Iran that is actively doing what they do. There is China actively doing what they do. There's Russia doing what they do quite actively. And we're going to have those conversations. But it's interesting to me how the media is still fascinated and fixated on every last thing that President Trump says. If he says that these people are insurrectionists, paid insurrectionists, well, their panties immediately get into a twist. And I think it's crazy that, you don't just ask a simple follow-up question. They just literally melt down. Listen to this.
How do you determine whether or not there is an insurrection?
Well, you take a look at what's happening. I mean, I could tell you there were certain areas of Los Angeles that you could have called it an insurrection. It was terrible. But these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They get money. And when you take a look at what they do, where they show up and everyone's saying, what's he doing? He's pounding the curbs. This one guy's pounding the curb, breaking the curb, and handing big pieces of granite. In some cases, it's granite and concrete to other people. And they're running out with it. And then we watch the other people, and they try and throw it into the face of the soldiers, throw it into the face of the police, and they hurt some people very badly. They go up on bridges, they drop it down on the cars as the cars are moving. They're not breaking the curb because they're doing a demolition service. They're breaking it to hand out to people as a weapon. It's bad stuff. I've never seen that before.
And I'm with President Trump. I haven't seen that one. But the good news is one of the officers that was hurt by this falling debris, they caught the guy. They identified the masked bandit, and they now have him in custody. Listen to cut number 26, Attorney General Pam Bondi, saying they've identified the suspect, and as I understand, they got him a little while ago. Listen to this.
Block case, Sean. Remember that case? We have breaking news right now. The case where the guy was breaking up the cinder blocks and he was throwing them at police cars. The federal officer had injured his hand. He was wearing a mask. The FBI has identified him. Bill Isali, our incredible U.S. attorney out there working with ATF, DEA, and the FBI have been doing a remarkable job. That guy has just been identified, and they are doing a search warrant on his house as we speak. And he has been identified. See his face. He is going to be on, his name is Reyes. He is going to be on the most wanted list. You have broken the news. His face is out there right now. That's him. He has been identified by great police work by the FBI. So you can run. You can't hide. We are coming after you federally. If you assault a police officer, if you rob a store, if you loot, if you spit on a police officer, we're coming after you.
That's Attorney General Pam Bondi. And you know what's interesting is that she's passionate about her job, and God bless her for doing it. But yet there's so many in the media that just take this easy. They're just like, well, they're really just trying to be peaceful. They're this, they're that, they're the other. And ultimately, we have to, call this stuff for what it is. And this is an interesting clip that I've got here where in a live report, and it's a pretty lengthy report, so we're not going to play all of it. But in this live report, they start talking about how they're unloading masks. These masks that, cut number 27, that they have these truckloads of bionic face shields that stop like tear gas and whatnot. And listen to how the conversation changes. They're telling everyone, the news anchors, how peaceful this is and how quickly it changes. Listen to this.
To see that Christina Gonzalez was saying that this is not an organized rally like we saw earlier in the day, where you have the different organizations that are backing some of these protests. This is more, she said, organic, and maybe that's what you're seeing there. I'm hoping that is.
What are those boxes?
Are those masks of some sort? Are those gas masks?
I'm trying to see that doesn't look like food.
Yeah, those are.
Looks like masks.
Yeah, no, those are masks. Yeah, so people are prepping for some sort of altercation with police as we speak.
Yeah, this is a different scene than what.
This intersection, like I.
Yeah. I mean, we saw
at this intersection, like I said, there's no local police. We've been seeing the burnouts.
A very different scene. And are those hats that you wear that are more like helmets? I mean, this is a worrying sight. I mean, Christina's sight.
To see.
Now, again, just listen to the reporters and how they are describing this. They're saying that their correspondent in the field, Christina Gonzalez, was giving them, how peaceful it was, how well organized it was, and yet they're actually watching this. And this is a video report. You're getting the audio of it. But the truck pulls up. They start handing out these bionic face shields that are like helmets. It's like a helmet with it's like a riot helmet that has a gas mask capability built in. And it's just fascinating to me how incredulous they are. They're like, what's going on here? This is a peaceful protest, I thought. Mr. Good, is there any more?
That is,
what are those boxes?
Are those masks of some sort? Are those gas
I'm trying to see
that doesn't look like food.
Yeah, those are.
Looks like masks.
Yeah, no, those are masks. Yeah, so people are prepping for some sort of altercation with police as we speak.
Yeah, this is a different scene than what
it's intersection, like I said.
Yeah. I mean, we saw
at this intersection, like I said, there's no local police. We've been seeing the burnouts.
A very different scene. And are those hats that you wear that are more like helmets? I mean, this is a worrying sight. I mean, Christina's site, which is like very close by, she was describing a festive atmosphere, and it looked like a lot of folks, including a lot of older folks, who were there for the right reasons.
This guy's tagging the sidewalk, right?
This is troublemakers. You don't probably don't put on a mask unless you have a plan of not wanting somebody to see your face. And so this is concerning.
Well, the woman who was handing out.
So what's funny about this is, again, these guys are realizing in real time that either Christina's report was fake, phony, and fraud, or you do actually have legitimate groups that are saying, hey, look, we don't agree with what's happening here with ICE. We are going to peacefully protest. We're going to hang up our signs. We're going to, chant something. We're going to, what protesters do in a demonstration. But what they're watching are these paid insurrectionists that President Trump is talking about, that are putting on gas masks, the same people that are chipping away at the sidewalk and the curb and breaking down these chunks of concrete to throw at police officers, that are then pouring gasoline on their cars, firing fireworks off of the roof, like quarter sticks of dynamite, like M80s. And again, this is like throwing small grenades, and that's what they're doing. So when someone says that this is mostly peaceful, or anything crazy like that, you've got to just look at them and laugh and say that they're grossly informed. Because the ill-informed are spreading the lies, just like these reporters here that would be, I guess, classically defined as useful idiots. So we're going to talk about these useful idiots a little bit more, but I also want to switch gears into what's going on across the globe, because there's a number of things happening tonight in the Middle East. There's a number of things happening in China. There's a number of things happening all over the place. I mean, you got Kiev rocked by a barrage of missiles. You've got Al-Qaeda urging Muslims to kill President Trump and his advisors just for being pro-Israel, and so much more that's going on. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with retired General Blaine Holt.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A 20-year-old New York man was arrested on 3 federal hate crime charges recently, and the warrant that caused his arrest said that he was part of a group chat that had messages coming directly from Hamas spokespeople, which caused the Post to look into group chats that might have been the chat that he was a part of, and led us to 2 major Telegram channels. They were called Resistance News Network and Gaza Now in English, that each had 100,000 and 200,000 subscribers respectively. And while we don't know whether these were the exact channels that this individual was a part of, they seem very similar in spirit and have updates directly from spokespeople for Hamas militant groups.
So this is the latest on this. Hamas is planning attacks on U.S. aid sites in Gaza. This is according to these Telegram messages. And senior Trump administration official told the Washington Free Beacon that the U.S. government has been monitoring the situation and is protecting Americans that are on the ground in Gaza. But lots of moving parts here. I mean, and again, this comes on the heels of another report in Breitbart News that al-Qaeda leaders are now urging Muslims to kill President Trump and his advisors for being pro-Israel. So I want to take these one at a time with our guest. He is a former United States Deputy Representative to NATO. He was a C-17 commander. He's a pilot. He's retired from the United States Air Force as a brigadier general, and he's a friend of this program. General Blaine Holt, welcome back, sir.
Hey, so good to return with you. Wow, what a world we live in tonight, Rich.
Wow is right. And talk to me, tell me what you know, what you're allowed to talk about with respect to these telegram messages that are indicating that there are imminent attacks on Americans in Gaza or USAID sites U.S. aid sites, so I guess where they're giving out humanitarian aid to those in Gaza.
Well, this is what we know right now, is that is a clear and present danger to those individuals working the new aid plan, where they have set up zones for Palestinians and innocents to come in and get food, get what they need, and get out. But what's removed from that is Hamas stealing the aid, Hamas benefiting monetarily from the aid and lording it over the Palestinians as a form of slavery. And so that's disruptive to what's left of Hamas. So it's totally expected that they would be threatening these aid workers. They're threatening the wrong aid workers. So let me tell you about these aid workers. They're a contract group. They're all former U.S. Special Forces. These are the people that break and destroy things, and they have grabbed a bunch of Palestinians who are there to help them. So they're working alongside of Palestinians in Gaza to deliver this aid. That means they're getting valuable intelligence. They're understanding Hamas's movements much better. And if I'm not saying they're not in danger, they are in danger, but this is what these types of people do. They put themselves into the most dangerous situations in the world. And here they are. But if what's left of Hamas wants to go pick a fight, wow, they're picking the wrong fight, because this is the varsity team.
Well, that's good news. It kind of reminds me of the brave men that fought the terrorists off at Benghazi. What a story that was. Now,
yes.
Back to this story. So this is a credible threat. There's also information that's out there regarding a hit being put on President Trump, or a call to kill the president and his cabinet or his aides because of support for Israel, and this coming from an al-Qaeda leader. What have you heard about that?
So it's very valid, and it's not just al-Qaeda. That's the Sunni side of this. The Shia side would be Iran, and they have death squads in the United States as well, that if they have the means, the methods, and the opportunity, they're going to take a shot at our president and others. And we should understand that danger extends to all Americans here. However, that said, if I was to advise President Trump and his administration tonight, you remember the hero's welcome he got in the Arab states. One of those things that he unrolled was, I will give HTS in Syria and this al-Jilani fella, who's now named al-Shara.
Right, al-Shara is an al-Qaeda guy, isn't he?
He's an al-Qaeda guy. So I would say, listen, I gave you a second chance. You're about to blow it, and I'm about to turn Israel loose on you. And that won't be good for you. So if I were you, I would get whoever this al-Qaeda guy is, and I would get him rolled up pretty quick, because what we're not going to do is put up with this stuff anymore, and we're about to be brutal with it. So what these groups honestly do is they see President Trump pursuing non-military means to the worst, most intractable defense problems around the world, and they're mistaking kindness for weakness. But they're also, these thugs are banking on the fact that they've got so many motivated people in the United States now that are fascinated by them, that get into these chat groups, that get into these Telegram rooms, and they're radicalized, and they think that they've got it clinched. and they couldn't be miscalculating more than they are now. And they're going to find out as we start to roll up these very bad civic situations that we see happening across our nation, starting with LA, moving into Chicago and beyond.
Yeah, and I'm seeing reports of that right now as well. The Chicago Police Department deploying the bomb squad downtown,
right,
as a result of some of the crazy that's going on there. We've also got simultaneous protests going on in New York that seem to still be protests, but I guess good as time as any. Do you think that this is the beginning of a nationwide civil insurrection?
I do, and I'm writing about it right now for my next article. The thing that we have to shun and push back on is the retail version of what the mainstream media is trying to sell. They're trying to sell a bunch of immigrants who are looking for a better life, seeking asylum, want to be a part of the great melting pot, and then President Trump's just a bad man for activating ICE to roll them up. He's evil. So that's not really what's happening at all. What's happening is President Trump, through Tom Homan on that operation in LA, picked a fight directly with the cartels. He kicked over one of their ATM machines that had rapists, thugs, human trafficking, and everything else associated with it. And then what happens? You've got elected officials from Bass to Newsom protecting them. And so that should get you to the motivations. And you start to think about the motivations, and just before you get conspiratorial, boom, President Scheinbaum from Mexico alleviates any misconceptions by saying, we're going to mobilize the Mexican military if you don't start taking our illegals nicely in the United States. So now you know what you need to know.
Well, hang on, General Holt. I want to get the rest of that story when we return. Plus, I want to get an update on what's going on with these rocket attacks in Ukraine. So, folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back to former Deputy NATO Representative from the United States, General Blaine Holt, and me, Rich Valdez. Keep it locked right here.
Hi, Rich. Great show. I've been listening to you the last 2 weeks. Very happy about the great work you're doing there.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Ukraine says more than 300 Russian drones hit multiple sites in the country overnight. Video circulating online shows the strikes hitting Kyiv. Residents report a relentless wave of drones and missiles. And this comes after Russia and Ukraine exchanged prisoners after peace talks in Istanbul last week. ABC News foreign correspondent Maggie Rulli has the latest. Hi, Maggie.
Hey, Diane. Yeah, these strikes on Ukraine appear to be one of the largest drone attacks on Kyiv since the war began about 3 years ago. The Ukrainian Air Force is saying that Russia launched 315 drones and 7 missiles across all of Ukraine, reportedly breaking through multiple layers of air defense, coming in multiple waves from midnight through the morning. Residents of Kyiv describe it as just a relentless attack. Now, Diane, the southern port city of Odessa was also attacked overnight. In total, 3 people were killed. At least 13 others were injured. Now, last night's attack, Diane, is just the latest in escalation recently. This past week, we have seen Russia launch some of its largest attacks yet in this war against Ukraine. They've launched hundreds of drones and missiles across nearly every region of the country. And this increase in attacks comes as both countries have confirmed a prisoner exchange is currently underway. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying that this is just the beginning. He anticipates more exchanges in the future. Now, Diane, these exchanges are all a result of peace talks in Istanbul, but so far no ceasefire has been agreed on.
So that's the latest there, and I want to get some reaction to that from the former deputy representative for the United States to NATO, retired Air Force General Blaine Holt. General Holt, what is your take on this right here? It seems like they're all full of it, right? Nobody's really keeping it real. They're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep spending. It seems to be what works best for them.
You have to look at how we got to this place. You started out with a deterrable war. Then you went into maybe there's a minor incursion possible for Putin. look, Rich, from Kabul to that day, they've been baiting Putin. Okay, fine. They've got him in. There is a European neocon bloodlust to get after the Russians. The Russians took the bait. I'm not going to absolve them of they shouldn't have rolled tanks into Ukraine. But they had an active peace plan like a month later that Boris Johnson himself said, we're going to give you whatever you need, and we're going to help you repulse the Russians out of all territories, including Crimea. Well, guess what? There's not enough weapons on the planet to do that, which we've proven, because if you're just going to do no strategy but weapons and money, corrupt money, you're going to get this. And now President Trump, since he's come in, he has tried to lead the Europeans and President Zelensky to peace. He has tried to counsel Putin, who's winning militarily, and used whatever economic levers he could. Well, ever since that day that they took 18 months, apparently the United States didn't know, which is a lie, to get after Russian bombers, a part of their nuclear triad where they were complying with the START Treaty of 2010, well, the Russians have taken the gloves off, and now they're saying, we don't want negotiations. We're not interested in that at all. We're going to prosecute the war. We're going to tell you how this ends soon. So that Tuesday, after the bombing of the bombers, they laid down peace terms. Honestly, Rich, they should have grabbed them. Zelensky should have said, okay, we'll try to work with this. Can we work some of this back? Instead of that, they just said, nope, we're going to fight on, and we're going to need more weapons and money, and we don't have bombs to give them. They just the Russians just took out another Patriot missile battery. Those cost $2 billion a piece, and they blew up all the weapon stocks. So I'm with President Trump. Look, my heart is with the Ukrainians, but the killing has to stop. This is over 1.3 million dead. And what we have to do now is stop this. President Zelensky has to understand that militarily this war can't be won, so you got to do it by other means. So is there areas economically where we can work back the Russians? He's got to explore that now, or he's going to fail his people tremendously. This is a desperate situation.
All right. So I'm with you. I feel exactly the same way. I don't want these people to die anymore. I don't want to abandon the Ukrainian people. But at some point, if you can't throw good money after bad, and you can't do things for naught. So if you are the, one of the national security team members advising the president, what's your advice to him? Cut bait, keep it moving, look the other way?
My advice to the president, and this will sound very blunt, but I couldn't be more clear. There is a NATO summit coming up. The Europeans have not lost their stomach for wanting to continue this war to the last Ukrainian against the Russians. Do be mindful of the fact that major wars in the past have been started on false flags, where it was a big setup. And Europe doesn't have any means whatsoever to wage a war against Russia. They have to have the United States. So don't get sucked in. And at the same time, if we pull from Ukraine now, at least it puts Zelensky into a forcible position to understand that he's got to end the war, that he doesn't have a blank check to go do so. And neither does Europe, for that matter. NATO's supposed to be a defensive alliance. Hey, they're proving that as an offensive alliance, they really suck. So they're playing with fire. Nuclear weapons are right around the corner. If you don't like Putin and you do get rid of him, you're going to get somebody far worse who really loves nuclear weapons. My advice is de-escalate, de-escalate. And I see nothing but escalation in the hearts of everybody in Europe, where they're rolling back on European values in favor of totalitarianism, Muslim extremism, and all of that. So J.D. Vance was right. How can we line ourselves with countries that won't be democratic countries?
Well put, General. Well put. Not what everybody wants to hear, but likely one of the few ways out and the truth. Amigos, we're on with General Blaine Holt. He's retired from the United States Air Force, where he served as the Deputy United States Representative to NATO. And General, I want to revisit a little bit of our conversation from before with respect to the cartels waging a nationwide insurrection in our country, in Atlanta, in Chicago, where the bomb squad's just been called to what the media is calling an ICE protest, in New York City. that's happening right now in Los Angeles. And this is not just the cartels, kicking and screaming, saying, hey, I don't like what you did. This seems like more than that. Your thoughts?
Let me tell you about the cartel's friends. That's a good place to start strategically. Fentanyl doesn't just become fentanyl because the cartels wished it on us. It becomes fentanyl because the Chinese Communist Party thinks it's a great way to kill Americans, which they do, 100,000 per year. Wait a minute, they've got other friends. They've got banker friends. They've got politician friends in the United States, in Washington, D.C., across the United States. There is corruption rampant in our nation. That is at the root ball of what our problem is. And the cartels are the enabler. This goes through the World Economic Forum. This goes through the City of London. This goes through Beijing. And what they don't like right now is that this wonderful business model that they have had is getting disrupted by one man who has said, I can't be bought off. You're not going to push me around. You can try to kill me, and it's not going to work out for you, and I'm coming for you. And everybody is going to go after him. So if you have a better way to explain why politicians would rather side with people waving Mexican flags around and scorching police cars than bona fide Californian voters, I'm all ears. But what I'm saying is, historically, we are at a point of inflection. This is for all the marbles. And this involves Iran. This involves all of the illegals here. This involves all of it. And the people who paid all this money to buy off politicians, corrupt them, blackmail them, extort them, they expect something for their money. That's why you see politicians standing up and doing things that don't seem like, it just doesn't make any sense at all until you apply that filter, and then you're like, okay, I completely get it.
General Holt, let everybody know how they can check out your new column, which is coming out this week, and the best way to follow you.
Well, please follow me at newsmax.com on the Insiders page. My last article was about Europe. Not much has changed on that one. And then tomorrow or the next day, we'll see my piece on what's going on in L.A. and how it can really affect a new reality here in the United States. And that'll be on. And then I'm always at Twitter at @the_irascible. If you want to debate me, I'm always up for it.
Outstanding. General Blaine Holt, I really appreciate it. Godspeed to you. We'll have you back really soon with an update on everything that's going on, because I know you keep your ear to the ground, and I appreciate it.
Godspeed, brother. Thank you.
You bet. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions, calls from all across the country, Idaho, New York, Indiana, New Jersey, and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. I want to start off in New Jersey, WOND Radio. Let's go to Lance in Galloway. Go right ahead, brother.
Hey, gracious good evening, Rich. It's good to hear from you. I really
Likewise.
appreciate that you having that General Holt on. But I did want to, I'll probably send something to his outlet there, one of his postings. But he's mentioned the false flags or the red herrings. My question to him and also to you is like, who's really running the war? Isn't it the international defense contractors and BlackRock, or is it the politicians that get paid off by the lobbyists? You have friggin' South Carolina, Lindsey Graham going over there, promising this, that, and everything. And then you also have Mike Pompeo going over and speaking to some other person over there.
Yeah. Well, Lance, I think what goes on here is, and it's a great point, I think you have warring interests. These warring interests are, the Make America Great Again people that want peace through strength. And you've got the Warhawk people, which, I have been a part of for a long time, that say, you know what, hey, I want peace through strength, and if you get stupid, we're coming at you. And I realize that the Trump approach is a better approach, where you can still do the military spending, you can still feed the military-industrial complex, but you don't have to expend everything that you've bought, and you can make a deal. And I think that is a good way to go. But the reality, I think, and the answer is there are competing interests there, and those competing interests take turns at calling the shots. And that's the essence of politics in reality, and sadly. Now, Lance, I want to ask you a question. You're in Jersey, listening to 1400 over WND. And tonight there is a new gubernatorial nominee in Jack Ciattarelli. What's your reaction to that?
Well, then also don't forget the young lady, Mickey something or other, on the Democratic thing. Well,
Mikey
I think it's
Sherrill,
about time. Right. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just thinking back. I can remember all the Democratic politicians, especially the senators, that were thrown out of office, especially the most recent one, Mendez, that it's like they take the money and run, and they think they're above the law or above the scratch and sniff test. I'm still wondering, when the hell is John Corzine going to pay back the $1 billion he blew? And what about Christy Whitman, who literally savaged and ransacked all the pension funds?
The pension fund,
She's
sure.
still riding around on her horse's ass. I mean, nobody. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. Half of these politicians are paid for, and they got their pockets inside out, and they got their hands out.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. And I wish there was a level of accountability other than getting voted out of office or being term limited out of office that existed or that exists. But it doesn't. I don't think anything will ever happen with any of those things. The only thing we can do is not make the same mistake twice. Lance, thanks for your call. Shout out to everybody listening on 1400 Atlantic City, WOND, in the building. Great station, by the way. And let me see. I continue. I want to go to Sandra. She's in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, KBFI. Sandra, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hi, Rick. Good evening to you. I love your show so much.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to make a comment regarding the low birth rate.
Sure.
It's a pretty worldwide phenomenon. I can't say that word very well. Anyway, I don't know if you've ever heard Barry Trower talk, but he's an expert, an EMF expert, and he talks about how all the technology that we're exposed to, and specifically talking about children in schools having Wi-Fi routers and all this radiation in the schools. When the little girls are exposed to this, it damages their ovaries and all the little eggs inside, and causes damage. And so basically, they can become sterilized just from all this exposure. And then plus with grown men, it really kills the sperm. And so this is serious, and most people don't want to talk about it because they love their phones. It's such a social thing, and they're just so absorbed with it, but they don't realize how much radiation they're absorbing in their body, and it affects you on a chemical level in all different kinds of ways. And so some people are extremely sensitive to it, and some people don't feel it at all. But it does shorten our lives, and it also causes fertility problems.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, that makes sense to me. I don't know anything about that, and it gives me something to research and see if we could find an expert on. Maybe this person you mentioned, this Barry fellow. But I think it's definitely worth pursuing, and it makes sense. There's a lot of things out there, whether it's something in our food, something in our water supply, something is causing the problems that we have. I mean, I also saw an article about 3 years ago, and then I saw it again about a year and a half ago, about an increased rate of erectile dysfunction amongst very young men. I'm talking about like 24 to 35. And it was, it hadn't happened before. And now that seems to be a growing number in that age group. So that may be the result of that because, those guys are definitely on their phones, as is everybody else. So very, very interesting, to say the least. Sandra, thanks for the call. Shout out to everybody in Idaho. And I'm coming back to Indiana, New York, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Speed round. You got to keep your comments to about 20 to 25 seconds. Let's start with Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go.
I just want to let everybody know that the leftists have a thing called No King. They're doing protests against Trump this coming Saturday on the 14th, and they're supposed to be nationwide. We even got one here in Bedford, so I tell people to go peacefully make their opposition to this movement known. Even if you can't make signs, you can go wear a Trump hat, and believe me, someone will engage you in conversation. So get out there. If you got one of these No King protests, in your town, which if they have them in Bedford, they probably got them all over. If you can serve, get out there and let your voice be heard in opposition to this, okay? Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to hear from you. I hope things are going well at the school. Let's go to Liam, Albany, New York. Keep it to 20 to 25 seconds. Go ahead.
Long story short, please consider playing Jason Aldean's song called Try That in a Small.
Will do. Anyway, folks, that's it for tonight. We will come back with more and more and more as we're able to do it. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America.